Here we go. One step at a time, don't be living on the line.
I have to confess, I used to hate information services. I wanted to be the IT guy. I wanted to be information technology. I wanted to be anything but services, but I have really come to embrace that. And so let's see here. I'm going to go through this. I'm not going to make my favorite mistake, which is to start talking about all these agenda items, but this is where I'm headed. I am going to talk about a little bit about the title. When I was preparing this presentation for submission, I had just watched the Blues Brothers for the umpteenth time. And it came to me that, you know what, their mission from God is very similar to my mission at work. So either that's a horrible thing or we can learn from it. So if we look at this mission that they were on, we're trying to save a mission-critical thing. We're trying to do something really good. We're trying to do something that's very valuable, but we can't use just any solution. And this slide, this would maybe 5 years ago even, this would have been applied particularly to IT. And it's like, oh, we want to be back in the 90s when we were cool and when we were doing all the information and when we were in charge of all this stuff. But now, this has expanded. It's way beyond IT because what's happening is people who used to be gatekeepers of information are finding themselves to only be curators of information. They don't have control. Information is more and more valuable. It's more and more available throughout an organization. And there are people who long for that day when it was like, you had to come to me to get that report. So it's not just IT that's suffering this problem. Success depends on having great systems, great applications, great solutions, but it also involves a little marketing. You have to talk this up in an organization. You have to talk particularly about successes. You have to talk about your plans. Where are you going? How are you going to make this stuff work? And the last thing I think we all know, whether you were IT or records practitioners or content people, not everybody wants you to succeed. Not everybody wants this to work. So what I'm going to talk about here is in addition to being something I think applies to you, this is what I tell my staff right now. This is what I tell my coworkers. This is what I'm telling my boss. You can't come to our organization and see like nirvana. It's not perfect, but when we talk about all these things that are changing, people often allude that we're in some kind of battle and that we're losing this battle with technology. I don't think it's a new battle, and I don't think we're losing. I think we have the capability of winning this, just like we have before with so many of these battles that have happened. So you can picture me. I've gone through this content with my staff of 3 people, individually and together. So that's what we're headed. And we have these terms. We have the velocity and the volume and all that stuff and the devices. You know what? I don't care. I really don't care. It's not about that stuff. It's not about your device. I don't care who bought your device. I don't care what apps. I don't care who bought the apps. I don't care what's in the cloud and what's not in the cloud. It's all about information, and it's about our company's information. It's not your information. That's what I tell my coworkers. That doesn't belong to you. That belongs to AII. And when I talk about this, the thing I want to key on this slide is people are pretty good about wrapping their heads around compliance with regulations or compliance with laws. People are not so good at all about understanding compliance with expectations. And the example I've been using lately with my coworkers is we're an insurance company, but we're a joint underwriting association. So we have member companies who pledge their capacity for the risk that we write. And our member companies expect that nobody's going to get through my security and impersonate my boss and then get into their network through their supply chain. Because if one of our members gets an email from my boss, he's probably going to do something with it. So that's an expectation that falls on every user in our company. we have to secure that. We have to be aware of that. In order to get this to work, sometimes we've heard previous speakers talk about how you have to be part of the process. Well, not everybody wants, I mean, like I said, I'm the IT guy. Not everybody wants me to be part of the process. I learned this back when I was at Pete Marwick and I was a consultant, and my boss wanted us to be part of the audit process. And he would ask, well, what are your colleagues doing over an audit? And I'd say, I don't know. And he'd say, why not? And I said, because they don't like us. They think we're going to go in and screw up the annuity that is that audit. They don't want consultants in there. And he said you have to insinuate yourself in the process. And if you think of that and you say, oh my God, that has such a negative connotation, that was my reaction 30 years ago. It does have a negative connotation, but you really have to do that. If you can't work your way into the process, if you can't be invited into the process, you have to find a way to squeeze your way into the process. You have to be aware of what's going on in the company. So I'm telling my guys to, you know what, you don't have a security project. Form a security committee. Get your peers on that committee. Talk about it all the time. Or talk about it once a month or twice a year, whatever. But just make sure you're always talking with that group of people. It's the same with ECM. The limited authority that I have in our organization, I try to use sparingly because I don't want to be that guy. I want to work collaboratively. I want to work cooperatively. Sometimes it doesn't work. That is my coffee cup, though. When I said that the challenge isn't new, this is a true story. In 1994, Senior Vice President of Engineering told me, I want my engineers as productive on the road as they are in the office. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Hotels didn't have Wi-Fi, they didn't have internet, they didn't have data jacks on the phone yet, and half the phones didn't have modular connections. So we made up a bunch of these, and we gave them to our engineers who liked taking things apart, so it worked really well for them. And the solution was, CC Mail Mobile, CompuServe Web Hub. Oh my God, some of you remember this. This is my favorite quote, though, because my first reaction to him was, that's impossible. And then I remember Captain Picard saying to Commander Data, things are only impossible until they're not. And I have always said that to my staff that the answer is always yes. And yesterday we heard walk away from the impossible. Sometimes the answer is no. Well, the answer is always yes, but in this case the answer was, yeah, I can do that, but I can't afford to do it. And it was exactly the right answer because I was a director of information services at the time, and this guy was a senior vice president of engineering. When he found out that I could do it, but I couldn't afford it, he went to the president and got me that budget. So we started doing it. We were able to do these things. We started buying people laptops. We started moving into a new era, way ahead of the curve because somebody else had the vision, and I didn't say no. I said, oh, I need help. Last year, when we were here, we heard a lot about playing on the other side of the chessboard and how lots of things are changing and change is happening faster, and there's just too much to take. And we have, in dealing with that, one of the things that I think we have to change is the way we make decisions. And until big data and analytics lets us put an IBM Watson in our pocket like a magic 8-ball, we're not going to be having the information we need to make the perfect decision. We're going to have to make good decisions. And that's okay, because an imperfect solution isn't failure. 14 months ago, I gave my boss an iPad. We were noodling in the office about, oh, should we wait for the Surface to come out? Should we do this? Or whatever they were going to call it at the time. And I'm like, let's just give him an iPad. I mean, who's going to complain about you gave me an iPad? Oh, So the thing is, he's had the device for 14 months. He's using it. He loves it. He likes what it does for him. So maybe it wasn't the best solution. Maybe someday he'll want a Microsoft product, but not today. This guy in the picture was on his nose in the sand about a second after I took this, and he ran up to me and said, do you have a picture of that? And he asked for my Flickr site. So you just have to take the wave and ride that, go with what you have. This is a slide, this picture is a slide that Lawrence Hart had in a presentation that I really loved about cloud computing, so I stole the slide from him. But we get blamed in IT and in lots of other practices. We get blamed for being unresponsive. We get blamed for not being able to take on a critical project. And it always comes back to budget. And we're all under budget pressure. Everybody wants us to do the stuff we do with less money or to do more stuff with less money. But there's two things, I have two slides on budget that, and again, this is what I tell my people, so, because they're involved with me in putting my budget together. And the first thing is, before we're going to get a budget, before anybody's even going to let us spend the money they told us we could spend, we have to create a culture of success. We have to deliver on the projects we've taken, and we have to make sure that we don't just deliver on this project and have all of those people saying, when are you going to start mine? So we're carving our projects up into little tiny slices, and we're doing our work and we're putting it back on the user, and we're picking up another slice and doing that work. So we're putting a lot of projects in motion at the same time. We're moving them, albeit slowly, but we're moving them all. And every time we get a little bit of progress made, we thank all the people involved. So the only thing you have that budget to spend, but the only capital you have in your workplace is the ability to say, this person did a good job. And you need to spend that liberally. You need to include that. It's not my department got this done, with the help of a few others. It's we all got this done. And keeping everybody engaged in this process lets you get through the problems that you might have. Budgets are real. And our budget process starts every year with somebody that says, here's what you spent last year. And usually the words after that are, we're looking for a little bit less. We're looking for savings in this area, this area, and this area. And I really ignore that. I absolutely ignore that. I give them the budget I want. But I understand our business strategy. I know what the peers in other departments want. I have a department strategy, and everybody should. My department strategy ties into that business strategy, and I go to my boss with, this is what I want, this is what I need to support the process you want me to support. And I understand what that process is. And then I explain to him, this is what happens if you don't give me this money. This is what's not going to get done. This is what's going to fail. This is what's at risk. And if you still want to cut my budget, that's okay. But at least you know, now you're in the boat with me too. We're all in this. Security is something that, well, we can't really say, you didn't give me the budget for security, so we don't have any, because we go back to that regulations, expectations thing. But security is a powerful motivator throughout an organization, and it's a great way to start conversations in organization because everybody's aware of it. There's no single threat, there's no single target. Everybody's keen to know how to do security better. So it's a way to get involved. And the AIM New England chapter last month had an event in Connecticut, and we paired an FBI agent from the cybercrime division with a certified ethical hacker. Now you want to think about that as your job description, as your title, certified ethical hacker. I would want to keep her happy. But the FBI agent started off with this quote, that the single most effective attack vector is to an organization is their employees. And then the ethical hacker started playing recordings of phone calls, and she played one of how she got this guy who's in charge of wire transfers inside an organization to give her his username and then change his password to a new temporary password. And she did that in about 35 seconds on the phone. It was just really scary. People were like turning off their phones. The three things that they left us is to know what are you protecting, what are your threats, and what's your plan. And that sounded pretty easy and pretty easy to get comfortable with. But they said, the FBI agent said, when I say what's your plan, it's what's your plan when you get hacked. How are you going to respond when your security is breached? And if you don't have that plan, you're not done planning. We deploy iPads to about a little more than half our company, who are people who, in the event of an emergency at one of the sites that we insured, would be part of our emergency response team. We wanted them to have these iPads. We wanted those iPads to be, VPN connected, fully functional. And we wanted them to not have certain things on there and to have a lot of other things on there. So we made the decision to deploy those. We paid for them. We pay for the 3G. We put this app on there, and we told them, it's ours, it's yours, deal with it. If you don't like the iPad, you want an Android tablet, fine, buy yourself an Android tablet, but you're not getting any of our stuff on it. Years before that, people had started buying iPhones and wanting them to bring to work. And actually, I checked. Our policy preceded the introduction of BYOD. We said, that's fine. If you're going to use your iPhone for work, we'll even reimburse you a little bit, depending on how often you travel for us. We'll reimburse you a little bit for that iPhone. But you're going to get email, access to email, because Exchange lets us remote wipe that phone. When we bought this app and we realized that this service, and we realized that we could push it out to iPhones, we went back to those people and we said, we know it's your phone, we know you bought it, and we know that we don't give you anywhere near enough money to pay your monthly bill. But if you want to do more with it for us, if you want VPN, if you want additional apps, you need to let us install this application. If you think that's intrusive, fine, stick with email. But if you want more utility on your phone when you travel or when you're home, install the application. So it's a cooperative thing. You don't have to have it, but if you want the access, then you do have to have it. When we opened up with the longing for that day when IT was cool, or I don't think accounting was ever cool, but some other discipline in the office was cool. If you really long for that, all you need to do is do it. You just need to be cool. You need to be the guy bringing the applications in. So from the IT side, it's like, oh, instead of complaining that all the users are bringing apps in and passing them around, be the one that's bringing them in. Be the one that's sharing them with people. I showed somebody in the office the AIIM app for the conference, and I said, if you're going to this conference in 2 weeks, look to see if they have something like this, because this is really cool. It's a really good way to go through the app, to go through the conference. Once we had these, this kind of sort of network of iPhones and iPads, we wrote an app for it. We wrote an app that replaced the little card you used to keep in your wallet. So it has all the company information, all the travel information, the 800 number to call when you lose your American Express card, all that stuff. This was a $300 investment, actually $299 with Apple to get the enterprise license, development license. It's really not an elaborate app. It's a couple of table views. But people love it. And what it did for my department was it sends the message that we are in this with you and we can be cool. When you compare it, like effort level down here to like our underwriting systems, but our underwriting systems aren't cool. Somebody can't pull out their iPhone, on a Saturday night and show somebody our underwriting system. They like this thing. So it's a way of keeping that relationship together. And now we're planning more apps that we're going to build. One of the things another thing that I slightly stole from Lawrence Hart is the fact that you don't have single vendor solutions anymore. I know there's people over here that would probably say, yes, you do, but you don't. And I can say that because in my organization, I was the single vendor solution. We relished in the fact that we insure nuclear power plants, and we're the only people in this country who do provide liability insurance for nuclear power plants. So we're not likely to buy a system to do that. We're going to have to write it. And I've been there for 25 years, and the major portion of my job description is writing application systems. But I don't have a lock on that anymore. Some of our systems have gone to the cloud, to services. Some of our systems are content-centric applications that are residing in SharePoint with a bunch of workflows running them. Some of our systems are apps on people's phones. So this isn't my domain anymore because I'm not the best provider for all of those things. That's a little bit of a hard realization to make, but it's true, and I don't care. I don't care where it is, as long as we can control it and we can get the people using it. If it meets their user expectations, if it gives them a nice experience, then it's a good solution. We've heard a lot of people talk about communication and constant communication and meetings and the lack of meetings and the inability to get meetings. We're moving everything as much as we can. We're moving it to over the wire. Any kind of communication will work, video, IM, phone, and anybody will work. If I need you on my project and you can't make it to a meeting, tell me who in your organization can fill in for you. And if nobody can fill in for you, well, you have a management problem. But we need to keep these things moving, and we need to have constant communication in order to do that. The last thing that I'm going to leave you with is the need to remain relevant, the need for you to remain relevant. And I'll just give you a couple tidbits here. When somebody talks about a technology problem, and I say, I just blogged about that 2 weeks ago, it doesn't matter that my mother is the only person reading my blog. It sounds credible. There's a little bit of credibility there. When we have discussions, I leave the office, if it had anything to do with content or technology, I leave the office, I email people links to AIIM's site, or I email them some of the AIIM content. And it's like, hey, based on your question this morning, you might want to read this. I mean, this AIIM is just a fantastic resource for all of that stuff, and you look good by doing nothing more than sending the link. So how easy is that? It's this constant communication. It's a constant effort to be engaged with the other people and to have them view you as a business partner, a collaborative employee, than some kind of isolated technology. So that's it. That's all I have, unless you have some questions.
Thanks, Dan.
No questions.
Dan, how do you get your users to go beyond this concept of the protection and security of data to appreciate it for its empowerment and enabling qualities? Because that's a real switch. It can be subtle, but it's super important. It sounds like you've been successful at that.
I do have to, we are a small company, so I mean, I know everybody in our company. It's only 34 people, but so I can use personal examples. So I can say to somebody, what if you send what if it appears that you sent Lawrence Hart an email and you asked him for this information? He's probably going to give it to somebody that works for him and somebody that works for him. And by the time AIM even realizes that it's a hoax, somebody has given me something I want if I'm the hacker. So I just make it very personal. And people, they can't help but react to that. So
It's not about the technology. It's not about the information. It's about what you do with it.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So
Questions?
I'm going to have Blues Brothers questions, too.
All right, this is a silly question, I guess, but what made you come up with this title?
You need to watch the movie. Actually, in a scene in the movie, the Blues Brothers go into a restaurant, and the character played by John Belushi asks if they have fried chicken, and the character played by Aretha Franklin said, "The best damn chicken in the state." And that's really what made me take that as a title, is that's what we have to have. That's what I need to be able to say. I mean, not that I want to do chicken, but I want to be the best provider of information and information services for our company. And I don't really care if that means my answer is use Box. I don't care if my answer is use SharePoint. I just want to be the guy providing the answer, or I want to be involved in the discussion. So.
And choices, I guess, just like a menu.
Right. Yes. Oh.
Big data is coming. What are you doing to get ready for it? With regards to like organizational structure or skills, or where those analysts and data scientists live in your organization?
Can you repeat the question, Dan?
If big data is coming, according to some, how are we preparing for it, and where do the people live within that organization? It's funny because big data, I have a problem with the term, except the way I get around it is I say, well, big is relative. I mean, we insure nuclear power plants. We have precisely 614 policies. That's not really big. We're never going to have big data unless we start indexing characters. But we have people, typically younger people who are a little bit more adept, that have asked us, well, is there any way that I could know this? Because I don't see it in any of the reports that the previous generation business managers designed. I get all these reports, they don't tell me this. Is there a way we can get that? And I'm like, yes, because my answer is always yes. And then I go back to my staff and I say, we got to find a way to get this because so-and-so wants it, and he's new and he's young and he wants to use our information, and we're definitely going to satisfy that request because that's what we want to encourage. So I don't know if that answers your question about how we're preparing for big data, but we're encouraging and we're supporting anybody who wants to use our data in a new and unconventional way.